Hi, my name is Hugo, and this is Hugo's Desk. Today, I have for you a review of Avatar Fire and Ash. In a way, this is something I haven't done on my YouTube channel in a long time, a review of a film. But I kind of think that this film, since I've been working in the visual effects industry for so long, I think it kind of deserves a review because it's. I'm not gonna lie to you, it's a bit special. I just feel that the film, it really. Well, let me get into it. I think it's important for me to try to establish a few things before we actually go through it. First of all, I was really happy that last week I was invited to go in to see the film. I went to see the film in London. It was a pre-release screening. It wasn't the premiere, but it was on the same day as the premiere. And it had a Q&A at the end. It actually had a Q&A with Stefan Lang and Sigourney Weaver and a few more actors. And I also had the composer as well on the Q&A, which was nice to watch the movie. Although the movie is very long, and so it's a difficult thing to go through the whole film and then on the end actually have a Q&A. But it was a nice screening. The screen is amazing. This is the Odeon Luxe in basically near Piccadilly Circus, really, pretty much. Just pretty much in Leicester Square. It's a really big cinema. And it was packed. It was completely packed. And they gave us some popcorns, which was nice touch. And they even gave us this weird Avatar chocolate, which I haven't tried it yet. I need to try it. But my expectations. Oh, also, I forgot to mention this. For the first time ever in my entire career, I've never been on a film where they actually had an embargo. This is a very typical thing on games, on video games, and since I've worked in the games industry, I know all about embargoes, and you can't talk about a certain game, but this has never happened to me. So I watched the movie last week, and I had to wait almost a week until I could actually publish this review, because it was supposed to be embargo. So it's always a bit of I always have a bit of a fear when there's an embargo, because it might mean the film is not good and they're trying to hide it. But I don't think that's the case here. The film is good. It's just that I have a lot to say about it. I'm going to just say out of the block, I really didn't have my expectations were okay. They were tempered. I think the first Avatar was a mind-blowing experience when it came out. It's already in 2009. That's a long time ago. And then Way of the Water was also stunning. I mean, we did an episode of the VFX Notes Podcast about it and everything. Me and Ian raved about the movie, and the movie did look amazing. I was a bit skeptic about this one because it hasn't passed a long time since the last one came out, and I was just really unsure of how this was going to turn out. And watching the trailers, it kind of looked more than the same. And I think if there is any criticism that I would have for the movie, it is that I think the movie, unfortunately, I think it's a bit repetitive of the second one, really. I think, again, it has a lot of underwater sequences, and it has also, like, of course, big boat ship battles. We have even a bigger boat this time. It has a huge plot device again around these like whale creatures that they have in the planet. So the environmental plot and the environmental story and the natural message of the movie and the plot devices are still all there. So if anything, I think it did feel like it was a direct sequel. It felt like this movie, if it would have been shot, which it wasn't, if it would have been filmed, it looked almost resembled like a situation where they did two in one go, when they did, Back to the Future 2 and Back to the Future 3, or when they did Lord of the Rings, they shot them all together. It really felt like that. It felt it was the same movie. It felt like it was a complete direct continuation. And that's a difference between the first Avatar, because in the first Avatar, you really see a huge jump from the first one and the second one. Not only because it's a completely different environment, and there's the underwater sequences, but also the technology is so different. And so the film looks very different from the first one. I don't want to spoil the movie, so I really want you to experience, and maybe later on the line, I'm sure we're going to talk about the plot. Obviously, we're going to do an episode of this movie on the Visual Effects Notes Podcast, because we have to, I'm pretty certain it's going to be nominated. I don't really think it's already on the list, on the Bake Off. I'm sure it's going to be nominated for an Oscar, because the visual effects are just stunning. They're just another league. And that's, I think, why I don't really want to focus on any spoilers. I don't really want to do it. The only thing I would say is that there is a new tribe in this movie that I think it's my favorite part of the movie. Because it's just outstanding, and I think Yona Chaplin does an amazing job as Varang, which is she's a leader of this tribe, which is a volcanic tribe, and they like worship fire, and that's why it's called Fire and Ash. It's really not a spoiler. You've seen it on the trailers. But all the sequences with her, all the sequences with Chaplin, she has such a presence on screen, and she's so powerful, and all the scenes are really, they're really like weird, and they're really like strong, almost like scary at some moments. So I think those sequences are really good, and I think those sequences are really my favorite parts. I'm not going to spoil the fact that what happens and why, what happened to them, and who do they connect, and who does this tribe go against. I don't really want to spoil the movie because I think people should really experience the movie. One of the things that I most hate on X and also on social media is when people spoil movies. I just hate it because, people are wanting to enjoy their plot, and then someone goes along and spoils the whole thing. I just really don't like it. But I think the reason why I wanted to make this video is because this movie is an experience. I thought this was not going to happen. I thought I already had the experience on Way of Water. When I saw Way of Water, I saw it on IMAX 3D in 48 frames per second. At least some parts are in 48 frames per second. I was blown away because I was very skeptic about the 48 frames per second because we had such a bad experience with Hobbit. But I think James Cameron just made me a believer. I think, in a way, I don't think I've ever experienced this in my life. I really recommend people to go into the cinema to watch this movie on the biggest screen they can find. And please, please watch the movie in 3D. I know everyone hates 3D, but if there's anyone in the world that can do 3D, is James Cameron. James Cameron can do stereoscopic 3D in an amazing way. You'll never have a headache. Your eyes will not be forced. You'll just feel fantastic. It will be so immersive that you won't even think about it. And also the 38 frames per second thing. If there's a criticism, I would say, is that I would wish that the 38 frames per second was the whole time, the whole entire movie. I understand that probably Weta would kill me by saying this because they would have to render so much more frames than they had in their server farm. But I think it would have been nice if the entire movie was from start to finish in 48 frames per second. I think the high frame rate of the movie really helps the movie. It makes it smooth. It makes it really fluid. You're watching the movie in 3D and you don't even notice the strain on your eyes. When you watch certain really badly translated 3D stereoscopic movies that have been badly converted, or I think after Avatar came out on 2009, there was an enormous amount of movies that came out that were not correctly made, and that really tainted the vision of stereoscopic to the general public. I think, unfortunately, not everything was like Avatar, and the high frame rate version of Avatar is really what you want to watch because, and James Cameron explains this in interviews, that he decided to cut into high frame rate sequences when it was too much strain on the eyes, and then he would cut back to 24 when it was not a problem. So he balances the movie by jumping from 24 to 48 and then 24. What I want to really convey the idea is that don't listen to anyone. Don't listen to people telling you that stereoscopic is bad, or listen to people that the high frame rate is bad because of Hobbit. Don't listen to anyone. Just go and watch it for yourself. And don't watch the movie in 2D. Don't watch the movie just in stereoscopic. Go and try to find a screening that is labeled as high frame rate, which would be labeled as HFR. That's usually how they put it on the cinema screens. And go and watch it. If you can watch it on IMAX, of course, go. If you can, of course, I know it's very expensive, IMAX, but this movie is a transcending experience. When you're watching this movie, of course, I'm a visual effects artist, so I get very distracted by the movie. I don't think my brain can really comprehend, and I keep looking at everything and looking at the speculars and looking at the reflections and looking at the shadows and the quality of the renders and the motion blur. And I I'll be honest, I sometimes stepped away from the plot because of that. So it's highly distracting. It's a shame. My brain is dead now and I can't really go back since I work in this thing. I work in the visual effects. I can't really go backwards and not see those things. It's unfortunate. So I envy you people that just watch the movie and don't even look at anything and they're just watching it. I really envy that, and I will never really experience that in my lifetime, I think. But I think that this movie is an experience. There was moments on the movie that when I watched some of the water scenes, especially there's a sequence on the movie, again, I don't want to spoil anything. There are sequences on the movie where you have water going half the screen and the other half is underwater. So you basically see underwater half and then on the top you see them going out. And I can't really show you this because all the trailers that came out are in 24 frames per second. And they're not in stereoscopic. So as much as you can see footage now playing while I'm reviewing this movie, I can't convey how good this looks when you watch it. It's almost when someone tries to explain to you how VR looks like, or when someone tries to explain to you on a YouTube video how HDR looks like. It's not really possible for you to experience except if you go and experience it yourself. But I think Weta just reached photorealism. The water is photoreal now. There's no way around it. The water is an achievement, like the way that it flows and the transparency layers and also the murk of it and the thickness of it and also the displacements you get from the lenses is just like mind-blowing. And there were moments of those shots that I just wanted to rewind and watch them again. And then I think also like especially all the shots with Spider, which is played by Jack Champion. It's also very impressive because Spider, I don't want to spoil, but there's something that happens to Spider on this movie, and Spider is very present on this movie. He shows up a lot on the movie, and you need to understand that every time he shows up, he's a real actor in the middle of an entire CG environment, and so this means that they had to rotoscope him, they had to depth integrate him, they had to like actually merge him in depth inside the stereoscopic scene. Obviously, I understand that most likely, just like on Way Over the Water, they replaced the bottom half of his body in CG sometimes, at least when they wanted interaction with the leaves and interactions with the floors. But a lot of the body is real and other parts of it is not real. So, of course, I know in some shots he's full CG, of course. Sometimes it's a digital double. That's a very common thing that happens in the industry now. So, but it's very impressive when you see the Spider shots in the film. I think really the water is the main protagonist of this movie, but I also like Spider. I think it's very touching, the story with Spider and his father. And I know this is a spoiler for The Way of the Water, but I'm assuming you've watched The Way of the Water already. But it's really touching to see the story he had with his father and to see them meeting again with, the Colonel, with Stephen Lang, we call him Miles. Quaritch. He has a very big presence in this movie. And I think that's also one of my favorite parts of the movie is this, we see so much of Quaritch and we see so much of his relationship with the son and we see so much of the relationship with the other tribe as well. I think it's really cool to actually know more about it. And I think Stephen Lang does an amazing job. He's so good on this movie. I think he's always been very good on all three movies, but he has a huge presence. I think those are the standouts to me. Like Stephen Lang is a huge standout on the movie. Johannes Chaplin is a huge standout on the movie with Varang. And I think also I need to say that Sigourney Weaver is amazing in the movie. Sigourney Weaver's transferring to Kiri, I know she did the doctor, she was Dr. Grace on the first movie and then she died. Again, spoiler, sorry, but you've probably seen the first one. But now that she's transferred into this entity called Kiri, and she still looks like Sigourney Weaver, but she is a 14-year-old Sigourney Weaver. And I just can't wrap my way around of how they've done this. How was she able to act as a 14-year-old, and you see her mannerisms, you see her, the way she moves, the way she's blushing, and the way she's looking at people, in the just wow look, the face of wonder that she has, which is a very typical face of a child, and I just feel that she did an amazing job with her acting. I think that's the other thing about the movie. And you saw, probably you've seen a few days ago, there was a documentary published in YouTube from Avatar and from Disney about performance capture, which I think is really interesting. It's a documentary presented by Stephen Lang, and I really recommend people watching that documentary, because it really talks about a turning point of them not really wanting to say it's just mocap, but actually they want to rebrand it and rename it as performance capture. And I think, not taking anything away from the stunning work that Weta and the thousands of artists that work on this project have done, I really do think that James Cameron has completely perfected this idea of performance capture, where you basically capture with the dots on the face, and you capture with the rig of the harness with the cameras on the front of the face, and also the entire reflective suit inside the volume. The way that he has accomplished a perfect way of filming something almost like a theater play, where there's no camera, there's no angles, there's nothing. That will be sorted out later, and basically they're just acting full body, and that really gives a huge empowerment to the actors, I think, because they're just like they are in the middle of the action, they're talking to the people, and they have to act with their full body. They don't have to just think about the top half, or the face, or the look on the eyes. It's not like that at all. And I think that is the biggest achievement of all these three movies. I think James Cameron is working on a different level from other people when we're talking about technology, because he's capturing the essence of these actors with this technology. And then that essence of the acting then goes in to this amazing pipeline that Weta has been developing since 2009. Well, even before that, because they were already working on Avatar years before when it was released. And so we're talking about like pretty much 20 years of technology, and it's probably going to be almost 20 years. It's probably going to be like, if it's not 20, it's probably going to be 17 or 18 years. Someone from Weta knows, they can write it downstairs on the comments. But I just feel that there's this 15 to 18 years of technology has been developed, which translates this essence of acting into a complete photoreal formed, now photoreal, because I think on the first Avatar it wasn't completely photoreal now, but now it is photoreal. It's this essence that was translated into the pipeline, and then together with the mind-blowing depth compositing and the shading and the rendering and the lighting and the animation and the formations and the entire pipeline of CG that Weta has developed, which is absolutely ridiculous. I don't even know where to begin with this. And we'll talk so much more about this on the Visual Effects Notes podcast, because it is coming. Don't worry. Me and Ian Files from Before and Afters, we're going to do, I'm sure, a massive episode about this film. Once the Oscar nominees come back and there's behind the scenes. There's not a lot of behind the scenes because the film just came out. I mean, I'm doing this review now just on the same moment that the embargo is lifted for reviews. So yeah, there's so much more to say. I feel like, so yeah, I don't want to spend here I'm sorry for the gibberish. I was so impressed by this movie. And so I think from a story point of view, it does have some problems. I feel like it's a little bit repetitive from the second one. And so, yes, it's a bit long. I give you that. I'm sure maybe there will be a stereoscopic release on now that there are some VR headsets that can actually play films, just like the Apple VR headset. So maybe there will be a version on Disney Plus that you can watch it there. I know that other films from Disney Plus are playable in 3D inside the Apple Vision. And everyone says, I've tried it, but everyone says the Apple Vision is the best player of stereoscopic films ever made. And I don't doubt it. It probably is. But I just feel that the story is a bit repetitive, yes. And I'm sure people are gonna really be upset about the story, and they're gonna be really pissed about it. And I'm not. I'm not, because I think the film is not about that. I think the story is touching, and the story is really beautiful, and Sigourney Weaver's arc is great, and Quaritch arc with his son is amazing, and the new Volcano clan performed by Chaplin and the rest of the crew is amazing as well. I just feel that this is not a movie that I go to the cinema to watch for the story. I go to the cinema to watch this movie to be blown away, and I was blown away by, let's say, if I use a video game term, by the graphics. I was really blown away by the graphics. I feel like this movie is stunning. It's the most realistic photoreal movie I've ever seen in my life. And this says a lot. I am an experienced visual effects artist, a very experienced VFX supervisor, and I have never seen CG like this. I just never have seen it. I feel like the level of photorealism of the skin, of the water, of the lighting, of the vegetation, of the camera movement, I've never seen anything like this. I just feel that this, even if you don't like Avatar, and imagine, let's say that someone is watching this movie and they hate Avatar. That's fine. You can hate Avatar, but you should still go and see it, because even if just for the visuals, it is an experience that you're never going to forget. And so that's the thing that I would leave for everyone here watching this video. I don't want to spoil the film at all. And I'm sure we're going to have a few spoilers when we do the Visual Effects Notes podcast and we dive into the technology of the movie, which not much is out. I'm assuming is pretty much the same as Way of the Water. And if you want to check out the podcast we did, Way of the Water, there's the link. You can go in and look at that. And we really go deep into the technology of that movie. Since the movies were made kind of back to back, I'm assuming the technology is kind of the same, but just an evolution of that technology. But I think you owe it to yourself to go and watch this movie. And I think the movie is going to do really well. I think a lot of people are always haters of James Cameron, and they always say the movie is not going to do great. And I think this movie is going to do the $1 billion that they usually do, the first one and the second one, because word of mouth is going to spread that this movie is a spectacle, and there is nothing like it. I think, if anything, James Cameron, what he has achieved here, even if you debate that the movie is good or bad, it is like anything you have ever seen in your life. And that's what we do to go to the cinema. I think he is without a doubt one of the few directors still making films that you actually want to go to the cinema to watch. And I think that's an achievement. I think he's not alone, of course. I think Christopher Nolan is like that as well. David Fincher used to be like that, but he's now doing films on streaming again, so that's kind of over. But I think there's a couple of directors that really are making spectacles on the cinema, and this is one of them. There is no way you can transfer this to home. You cannot watch this movie like I just watched in 48 frames per second, in stereoscopic, in IMAX, in a TV. That just will not happen. You will never have that experience, especially if you watch it on an iPad, or you watch it on a laptop, or you watch it on the iPhone. You will never really comprehend the level of detail that this movie has. And so I think go and watch it to the cinema. And then tell me in the comments what you think about the movie. I'm really curious to see what the reactions will be to some really incredible plot devices that happen in this movie. Again, like I said, I don't want to spoil the movie, so I'm not going to talk about the plot. And I'm just going to say to everyone, I liked the movie. I wasn't blown away by the plot. I think the movie has some plot problems, and I think the movie is a bit long, and the story is not as amazing maybe as the first one, I think. But it's not about that. And I really want to know what you guys think. So just write that down. I would love to have a conversation with all of you about it. And I think once more time has passed between the release of the movie and more people have watched the movie, I think then I will be maybe more happy to do an actual spoiler review of the movie. And then maybe we can have that discussion, maybe a bit later, maybe in a couple of weeks, or maybe in a month or so after a lot of people have watched the movie. Maybe I'll do that. Definitely the Visual Effects Notes podcast will be coming soon as well, and we'll discuss more there. But that's it, really. That's it for me. So I'm sorry if I just rambled so much. This was an unscripted video, which is not very common for me. So it was a completely unscripted video. And I just wanted to give my thoughts of what I thought of the movie. So hope you enjoyed. And as always, you know where to find me at Hugo's desk. And have a great day. And please let me know what you think about the movie downstairs on the comments. I'll see you all later. Bye.